right, well, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. A few more people may drift in. It's very nice to see everyone. It's nice to be back in person for Senior Law Day. This is our first year back in person since 2019, so we are just absolutely thrilled. My name is Brett Landis. I'm on our planning committee. I would like to thank the other members of our planning committee, Pete Rogers, Maya Labrie, Deidre Braverman, Erica Corson, Liz Parker, Desiree Furley. And I'd like to thank our board of directors, Pete Rogers, Sarah Farrell, and John Estes. We have a few announcements before we get started. First up, if anyone did not bring a face mask, we have some available at registration in the lobby and Ask a Lawyer over in the gym. We also have hand sanitizer around, so please feel free to use frequently. Ask a Lawyer sessions will run until noon. You would sign up for Ask a Lawyer in the gym, so if you're in the lobby, turn left and keep going. We do have limited slots available, so please sign up early. If you do not get a slot, however, we also have information for the Boulder County Bar Association virtual free legal clinic that can help answer some questions. There is a continental breakfast available just outside of Levin Hall. Please help yourselves. There's coffee, there's fruit, there's pastries. It's delicious. I had some earlier. Restrooms are outside of Levin Hall. Women's restroom is just to my right, your left. Men's restroom is to your left, my right. Or my left, your right. Whew. You can tell I got up early this morning. Please check out our sponsors' exhibit tables in the lobby. I do want to highlight one sponsor, Jorgensen Brownell and Pepin PC. They are one of our silver sponsors, and we accidentally left them off the printed material, but they are here in person, helping folks out, and Catch, one of their partners, is speaking on fiduciaries. So great talk to go to. We will have Senior Law Day handbooks available after the last session begins at about noon. We ask that you fill out an evaluation to receive a handbook. It will go very quickly, we promise. And with no further ado, I'm really excited to introduce our first speaker, our keynote speaker, our District Attorney Michael Doherty. He is the District Attorney for the 20th Judicial District, Boulder County. He has lived in Boulder since moving to Colorado to oversee the Justice Review Project, an effort to address wrongful convictions in the state of Colorado. D.A. Doherty started his career as a prosecutor with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He currently serves as the president of the Colorado District Attorney's Council. He is the proud father of two 14-year-old twins, and we are very lucky to have him both as a speaker today and as one of our public servants. So thank you so much.
Try this one more time, because right now you're looking at a picture of one of the Doherty twins.
That's all right.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you so much for everything you do and all the organizers do to bring us together for this special day. I am so excited to be with you today, and I look out and I couldn't be more thrilled that we're starting to exit the worst parts of the pandemic and starting to come together as a community. And I look forward to next year when there's more people in these seats, and the year after when there's even more, and we go back to where we have a packed house here for Senior Law Day. But I know the organizers are helping to record this, and they're going to make it available to those who are unable or don't feel comfortable yet coming back to large public settings. But I'm just so excited to be here, and I'm honored to be your district attorney. I've had the honor of serving as district attorney since, Thank you very much. Since 2018, and I've been a prosecutor since 1997. I had the privilege of working with Robert Morgenthau, who was the district attorney for Manhattan for many, many years, until, as he put it, he took early retirement at age 91. alongside him and helping run the office in Manhattan was a real incredible opportunity for me at an early point in my career. But no honor greater than becoming the district attorney for Boulder. My family and I moved out here in the end of 2009. I had a younger brother who's a physician assistant at the hospital, actually. He moved out here first. My wife and I would come out here and stay with him, and then we'd head to DIA. The lines were shorter then, by the way. But we'd head to DIA and we'd question, why are we flying back to Brooklyn? Like, what are we doing going from Boulder back to Brooklyn? And then finally, when the twins were born and before they started school, we said, now's the time. We have to make the leap. And we've been in Boulder ever since, and I feel so grateful to be here and to work with amazing public servants in the district attorney's office and throughout Boulder County, and the work that they do every day. So we're going to go through a few things today, including just a quick overview of the district attorney's office. I wanted to just share with you, we have almost 100 people working in the DA's office. Our mission every day is to do justice, to do the right thing, not to rack up convictions like notches in a gun belt, but to do our very best to reach the right result in every case. And we have roughly 10,000 cases per year that come into the office, traffic, misdemeanor, and felony cases. We have jurisdiction over all criminal offenses committed anywhere within Boulder County. So here's a fun fact of the day for you. There are 64 counties in Colorado, but only 22 district attorneys. And the reason for that is most of the jurisdictions have multiple counties with one district attorney. But when it was first established, it was based on population. So Boulder, Weld, Denver, and Pueblo, all 4 of those counties have one county within the jurisdiction. Every other district attorney's office has multiple counties. And that was established based on population. So we have Boulder County with authority over any criminal offense ranging from shoplift or trespass, all the way up to and including sex assault and homicide cases. So it's a busy office, and I'm really grateful that we have incredibly hardworking public servants who are committed to doing justice. We have 2 offices, one in the courthouse in downtown Boulder, the Justice Center, and then one up in Longmont on Kimbark Town. Our mission, actually, since we have a smaller crowd, do you mind if I jump down on the floor?
Go for it.
If I blow out a knee, that would be a bad start to the day. And since we have a small crowd, I really encourage you to let me know if you have questions. Don't wait till the end. Any questions you have, comments, I'm going to share a lot of data with you that might spur other questions for you. Feel free to raise your hand and let me know. Yes?
Is Broomfield in your service area?
No, Broomfield is in the 17th Judicial District. Adams and Broomfield are 2 counties within the 17th. Okay. The district attorney is Brian Mason. I was just on the phone with Mr. Mason last night. We have a strong working relationship, so if you have any questions about Broomfield, I'm happy to connect you with them too.
Thank you.
Sure. So our mission every day is to do justice and do the right thing. Not that the system is perfect, and there are times where we don't achieve what we think is the right result. But it's incredibly meaningful and fulfilling to go to work every day committed to trying to get the right result in a criminal case. The right result for the victim, the community, but also the person who's been accused or suspected of committing the criminal offense. We also are committed to, and our top priority is community safety, standing up and fighting for the public to make sure that people here in Boulder are safe and feel safe every day. And we'll talk about some of the crime rates in Boulder as we go through this presentation. Also fighting for victims in cases, whether it's a sex crimes case, an elder abuse case, a domestic violence case, making sure we in the district attorney's office are committed to each and every day going to court and fighting for victims, doing our very best to support them every step of the way. One of the things that's unique about Colorado when it comes to victims is in 1993, the voters of Colorado passed a constitutional amendment called the Victims' Rights Act. So victims have certain constitutional rights that don't exist in other states. So what that means in practical terms is of those 100 or so public servants in our office, 20 of them are victim advocates who are assigned to help victims on cases. So if you're the victim in a case, not only do you have a prosecutor fighting to help you through the process and on the case, but you also have a victim advocate standing there with you every step of the way, coming to court with you, calling you in advance, making sure you're fully informed and included in the process. So 20 members of our staff are assigned to help victims. I compare that, for example, to when I was at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office back in the day. And we had 550 attorneys and 8 victim advocates.
Woo. But those were the days.
Literally upon the prosecutors to try to help people, counsel people, support people, even though we weren't properly trained to do that. So in Colorado, we're doing a much better job for victims overall, not just Boulder, but throughout the entire state because of that Victims' Rights Act that passed in 1993. Also working to improve the justice system. And that's something we've done a lot on, not just since I became district attorney. Stan Garnett was a champion on this as well, making sure we do everything we can to improve the justice system, make sure we're serving everyone fairly and equally, and building a bridge to those in the community who don't trust the police and don't trust in the justice system. Because if we want to really truly achieve public safety, we have to have the trust of all community members. If someone's scared to call law enforcement, or refuses to cooperate, or doesn't want to come down to the courthouse as a witness, or shows up as a juror, and they don't believe in the prosecution, they don't believe law enforcement, then that makes it much harder for us to actually preserve public safety. So for example, years ago I had a case where an individual had been shot and wounded, and he refused to cooperate with the prosecution. And I said, why? He said, I just don't trust the system. I don't trust the system. So as a result, the shooter was never apprehended and brought to justice, the gun was never recovered, and the crime was never solved. So that's a practical example of why we work so hard to improve the justice system. And also, people who go through the justice system as a victim or the accused, obviously has serious consequences. We want to make sure the system's working as well as it possibly can. And this falls under the heading of always doing our best to do justice. Here are a couple of case priorities for our office. I just thought I'd share this with you before we dive into some of the substance of what we're going to talk about today. You see there, violent crimes are a top priority for us, both misdemeanor and felony cases. So domestic violence cases, we started the Domestic Violence Acute Response Team. It's the first of its kind in the state of Colorado, to make sure that we have prosecutors and investigators assigned to the case from the very beginning, so that we can support victims right in the first hours after a domestic violence incident has been reported. Also sex crimes, assaults on police officers and other first responders, and then of course attempted murders and homicide cases. Also crimes against the most vulnerable, so older folks in the community, children, immigrants who might be scared to report to law enforcement because they're worried about possible immigration consequences. So with that in mind, we actually started an immigrant protection program in the Boulder DA's office to make sure that victims and witnesses are being protected and able to come forward without fearing immigration consequences. Because as a matter of fundamental fairness, when someone's a victim of a sex assault, they should be able to receive justice in the system and not be worried that they're going to be deported if they come forward and report it to the police. So under the Immigrant Protection Program, law enforcement in Boulder County and our office will never ask someone for their legal status. And if we find out, which we often do just through conversations with victims and witnesses, we will never report that to the federal government. And that's part of our commitment to trying to make sure we're able to get justice in those cases and preserve community safety. So that's why they're on the list of most vulnerable here. And also we started the Bias and Hate Crimes Initiative in 2018, because hate crimes have gone up in this country since 2016, including in Colorado and here in Boulder County. Boulder County is truly a special and beautiful place, but we're not immune from the challenges that face other communities, of course. So we've seen hate crimes increase. We have a hate crimes initiative as well. We have, yes?
Is there a program to have mental health people ride along with police to guide them? Because I had a real problem with a person in my house that was bipolar. It was so difficult to get her mental health treatment. I called the police and they couldn't help me.
It's a great question. So the question is, are there programs where people can go along with police officers, mental health professionals, to help an individual who's going through a mental health crisis and needs treatment, and where the arrest of an individual is maybe not appropriate or the best option? So the answer is yes, but we need to do more. So part of the challenge we have is we live in a state that ranks in the bottom 10 in the nation for mental health treatment being available in the community. So we built systems in law enforcement and the Justice Center to help individuals with mental health disorders. But people should not have to hit the doors of the jail or the courthouse to get the help they need. And we as a state need to improve the amount of mental health treatment available in the community. But to your question, most of the law enforcement agencies in Boulder County, and there are 8 of them, now have co-responder programs where mental health professionals go out with law enforcement on mental health calls when someone's going through a mental health crisis. We strongly support those programs. We continue to push and advocate for those programs. Part of the challenge is getting mental health professionals who are willing and able to work, for example, at 2 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Often the calls we get are in the middle of the night. So getting mental health professionals who obviously can make a lot more money in private practice, getting them to say, I'm going to work with the police at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. But Longmont Police Department, for example, is about to add an overnight shift, so they'll have all 4 of their shifts for 24 hours a day covered with mental health professionals as co-responders. We're starting to see that more and more. Oh, sorry, Meg.
Oh, I just wanted a little bit of a definition of what you determine a hate crime.
Great question. So what is a hate crime? So an important distinction here is the difference between hate speech, which is repugnant and disgusting and terrible, but can often be protected by the First Amendment, and a hate crime. And the definition of hate crime just changed recently, and our office supported this change, where previously a hate crime had been a crime that's committed based on the intent someone has, someone's mental intent, because of another individual's gender, race, ethnicity, and so on. But that's hard to do, right? If this gentleman gets up and punches me in the face, which I'm not asking for, if this individual gets up, you don't know necessarily what's going on in his mind, right? Why is he doing it? So that's a hard thing to do, a hard thing to prove. However, we recently changed the law in Colorado to be what's called mixed motive. So the race, gender, and ethnicity of the person doesn't have to be the only reason for the assault, if it's part of the reason for the assault. So let's say the assault begins, and during the assault he says something about my sexual orientation or my gender or something like that. Then we have a mixed motive, and now we would be able to prove it as a hate crime. That law just changed last year in the state of Colorado, and our office testified in support of those changes. So it's an act committed based on someone's hate, but speech is often protected by the First Amendment. I think that's an important distinction, and I think sometimes we see hate speech and it's infuriating to us, and it should be, because of the values we have as people and as a country, but there's a distinction between hate speech and hate crimes.
I mean, there is a limit to First Amendment protection. I mean, like they always say, you can't, fire in a crowded theater and call it First Amendment protection, but somebody has to make a determination then as to whether or not, which side of the fence that falls on.
That's absolutely correct. There are limits on speech. So the courts, there was a case in 2020 from the Colorado Supreme Court where the court laid out the criteria to analyze where does speech cross the line into a crime.
Yeah.
So how close the person is, how actual the threat seems to be. So in other words, is it over social media or is it in person? And how is it being conveyed to the person? What is being said to the person? And the Supreme Court laid out those criteria, and we always look at those criteria in determining when to charge hate crimes, which we have as an office.
Just one more.
Sure.
Going back to the mental health thing, I remember Sheriff Pelley complaining about how, there was a kind of a gray area when there was someone who was having a mental breakdown and doing something serious.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not running a mental hospital here, but he would always wind up with the problem, And so there's a gap in there that when somebody, the police are called to apprehend somebody, many times if there was some facility available to take them to, they wouldn't have to take them to jail and have to contend with that.
Right. You're absolutely right. So he's talking about the gap that exists between those that need mental health care and the ability for us to provide for mental health care. We had a very, very tragic example of this at the end of last year where Louisville police took an individual not just to one, but to 2 separate hospitals for mental health treatment. Both hospitals refused to keep the individual there, so the Louisville police were left with no choice but to arrest him for the crime he had committed. So they had tried everything they could to get him help. He then gets arrested. We had asked that he be held on a bond, so that he be held in custody while the case is pending. The judge granted him a personal recognizance bond that allowed him to be released. Then he went on to kill an older gentleman in Denver for whom he had worked over the years. But that's a terrible and tragic story, but it highlights Louisville police is driving all over the place, all over the county with this guy saying he needs help, he needs treatment, and recognizing that just arresting our way out of these problems is not always going to be the first or best answer. And Sheriff Pelley, he's been a great champion, and we're going to talk about our mental health diversion program that he helped bring to Boulder County, but we need to do a lot more. Right now in the jail today, there are 470 people there. Of those 470, roughly 60% of them have a significant mental health disorder. 60%. Did you say why?
I said, oi.
Oi, yes, oi. I agree with you. Oi. And that's consistent with jails all around the state. Every sheriff would tell you, as they've told me, they're running some percentage of the jail as a mental health facility that they're not equipped or skilled to have. But part of the issue in this country is we shut down a lot of the mental health facilities, largely after the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. And now we've gone to a model where we don't have places to bring these individuals for care. So I did a ride-along with the Boulder Police Department last November. Cold, cold night. We got called to the Boulder Homeless Shelter in North Boulder. 2 young police officers. They were really compassionate and really it was really impressive actually how caring they were, how patient they were. And a young woman had been thrown out of the shelter for slapping a member of the staff. And she just refused to leave the shelter. And the police could arrest her for trespassing, but what would that really gain? But she refused to leave. And they talked to her for an hour and a half. And we're out there, it's midnight. And it's freezing cold, and I'm in my coat. I'm like, I wonder how long these guys are going to keep doing it. I mean, like, how long do we do this? And they just kept trying and trying and trying and trying, and then finally they were able to find a place for her that night. But that's the kind of gap that exists where the police are out there in the middle of the night saying, what am I going to do here? So we're going to keep talking about that as we go through this presentation. I did want to touch on vehicular crimes, and I will in a minute. Financial fraud cases we're going to cover. Those are a priority for us. Repeat felony offenders are a focus for our office because of the impact that they have on the community. Often a small number of individuals can have an outsized negative impact on the community. We have, for example, a case where 8 individuals committed over 32 bike store burglaries. 32, think about not just the bike store owners, but everybody who has a bike that was taken from their families, the impact on them. So it's 8 individuals causing a tremendous amount of damage. Repeat felony offenders are a focus for our office. And then drug distribution cases, including and especially fentanyl deaths. I was at Boulder Prep High School yesterday morning talking to the students, and I think I could probably spend less time with you on this subject than I did with them. But just being aware that if someone offers you a pill, you may trust them, but don't trust where they got the pill from. So fentanyl is in so many of the substances that are out there right now. So if someone says you should take this Xanax pill before you go on the plane, or you seem stressed, take this pill, I got it from my friend. Don't take anything that's not come from a doctor or from a pharmacy. So our restorative justice and diversion program is one of the things that we've set up in our office to try to help people get back on the right track. That is something we're really passionate about because we have too many people who cycle in and out of the jail over and over and over again. There are people, of course, who belong in custody. Those aren't the cases I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people who are in the jail over and over and over again. So our restorative justice and diversion program is designed to impact people in a positive way very early in their lives and very early in their first entry into the criminal justice system. This program has been a tremendous success, in large part because of our volunteers. So if you're interested and have the time and willingness, you can volunteer and get trained up to be a facilitator and part of our restorative justice program. That information is available on the District Attorney's Office website. We've been able to help so many people through restorative justice and diversion. And what I would really highlight for you are 2 numbers on the screen. 92% of the people who go through this restorative justice and diversion program have successfully completed the program and not reoffended.
Whoa.
And then you see there that low 8.9% recidivism for all diversion participants. That's extremely low when you look at other numbers. So for example, for the state of Colorado, this is not Boulder, state of Colorado, individuals getting out of state prison return to state prison 50% of the time within 3 years. 50%. I look at that as a failure rate. If I told you, you should come to dinner with me tonight, I'm going to take you to a restaurant, only 50% of the people get food poisoning. I imagine you decline. If I told our law students in the back, you should go to CU Law School, only 50% of the students fail out. I imagine they'd probably choose another law school, right? We should not allow our state to continue a 50% failure rate from people coming out of state prison. The question you might have is, well, what's the nationwide average? Nationwide average is 32%. So we're far below the nationwide average, and that has an impact on future victims who are going to be victimized, the offenders who return to state prison, and the taxpayers. So we need to continue to push as a state to do better, and I do believe the Department of Corrections is trying to do that. We do have a mental health diversion program that I wanted to touch on. We started this with the partnership of Sheriff Pelley and our office. It's the only one of its kind in the state of Colorado. And individuals are screened at the jail to determine if they have a significant mental health disorder. And if they're arrested on a low-level offense, we then divert them out of the jail and connect them with treatment in the community. It's been a tremendous success. So one good example I would give you is a gentleman who was arrested 100 times in 2019. Think about that. All petty offenses, right? Because otherwise he wouldn't be getting out to commit 36, 37, 38.
Right.
But think about the impact of his life, the community, how many people were calling 911, the police resources, prosecution resources, and so on. We get him in the mental health diversion program, stable medication, treatment, helped him connect with housing. He's been arrested once since then, once. That's the reallocation of resources that we try to do to improve community safety and to be smarter about how we're approaching these problems. We can't approach them simply as wear a hammer. Because if we're a hammer, then everything starts to look like a nail to us, right? And not every case can or should be solved with just a pounding. There are times where the criminal justice system is designed to be punitive, but when you have someone being arrested 100 times on petty offenses, I think we have to recognize there's a better way of doing things. And I started as a prosecutor in 1997. And I'd be standing in night court in New York City, and you'd have criminal histories, rap sheets that were this thick. And I'd be going through it and trying to get ready for the arraignment. And it's happening in the middle of the night, and just because that's how many cases we had coming into the system. You have court all night. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. This person has 100 prior convictions, all low-level offenses, and he's back. And then the judge would say, time served, and he'd walk out, and I would know full well that he's going to be back. So the system has to and has in fact improved. We have a lot of work to do to continue to improve it, but these are some of the improvements that we put in place. So let's go quickly through crime rates. The slide's a little hard to see on the screen, but I wanted to talk about crime rates because we're going to talk about elder abuse and abuse in later life, but I also want to recognize that you're all people here in Boulder County, so crime rate information is relevant to you and you can be victimized by any kind of criminal offense. So I wanted to highlight this for you because I think people are helped by the data and looking at data as opposed to just our own anecdotal observations. I think someone could go around Boulder and say, this is a safe and beautiful community. I've never been somewhere so safe. And they might actually be right about that. Or someone could walk around Boulder and say, I've never seen it this bad. I don't feel safe anymore, and crime's gotten worse. And that actually would be true as well. So I look to the data that drive a lot of the work we're doing, and I always want to share the data with the community so you have the data and you can make your own interpretations of it and ask me questions about it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So this is violent crime statewide from 2019 through 2021. So a 2-year period, 3-year period, statewide. It's gone up statewide by 17% over that period from 2019 through 2021. Jefferson County, which borders us to the south, 23%, Boulder 27%, Arapahoe 37%, and you see the numbers on the screen there, Weld is 31%. Here's the murder rate for Colorado and the United States. And just to get you oriented to this graph, what you're looking at is on the left-hand side of the screen here is 1985, and on the right-hand side is 2020. The blue line is the United States, the orange line is Colorado. And when I look at this chart, what I see is generally Colorado tracks the rest of the country. So you see there, the spike for the United States was actually in 1993-94, that all-time high of homicides committed, 23,182. You see, we were going up as a state then as well. And then the U.S. begins a steady decline. Colorado is more of a jagged decline, but Colorado is going down as well. It goes down to an all-time low in 2001 to 127. Then Colorado starts to go up a little bit again, and now the U.S. and Colorado have both been on the increase over the last couple of years. Let's talk about property crimes, because often violent crimes are committed by individuals known to one another. So we all fear the stranger assault. We all fear the attack on a jogger. And those are the things that capture the attention of the media. Those happen far less often than attacks by individuals known to one another when it comes to violent property crimes are different. Often property crimes are committed by strangers to the victims. So the property crime rate has been a real focus for our office and a priority. And we look at the other jurisdictions to see, is this a Boulder problem or is this a statewide, nationwide problem? And trying to figure out what can we do to drive these numbers down. So this is the property crime rate, which has largely gone up nationwide from 2019 through 2021. Boulder has gone up 18%. Broomfield 18, Gilpin 35, Denver 55. Grand 39, Weld 26, and Adams 28. The Weld Adams numbers matter to me because those are bordering counties for us, bordering jurisdictions. So I always look to see their numbers and how we're doing compared to them. And I'll stress this one thing before I take your question. I never look at these numbers and say, well, it could be worse if we live somewhere else. I want to stress that. Because this number is too high for Boulder County. And to me, it's unacceptable and something we have to continue working on. But I look at the numbers to get a better feel for how much of this is a jurisdiction issue, or how much of this is a statewide issue, because that helps determine our response. Yes, ma'am?
What is a property crime?
Great question. So all this data is from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and they break it out. Property crime can be anything from misdemeanor up to felony, including theft. So theft obviously has a victim involved, but they define theft as a property crime. Burglary is a property crime. So burglary of an office is a property crime. Someone stealing a bicycle, property crime. Anything where someone is stealing or defrauding someone of money or property. Property crime rates for the US and Colorado. Again, 85 through 2020, with the blue line being the United States, the orange line being Colorado. You see that we were actually in Colorado at an all-time high in 1986. So when we think it's never been as bad as it is today, this data actually helps us to put it in context. So we need to make it much better, but I also look at the all-time high in Colorado as being much higher than where we are right now. That was back in the mid-80s. Then the rate of property crimes declined greatly for the US and for the state of Colorado, and you see how much it came down in 2008, 2009, and now it's on the increase, and it's going up at a time where in the United States it's not been going up. So that's concerning to me that we're seeing Colorado numbers going up, the US continuing down. One area where we've had significant issues here in Colorado is auto theft. Auto theft has gone up 86% in the state of Colorado. We lead the nation in auto theft increase. It's a category you never want to be the leader in, obviously. So 86% for the state, 155% for Denver, 170% for Broomfield, 60% for Boulder. What's interesting about auto theft is in 88% of all car thefts, the car is recovered within 1 week of the theft. So what that means is often people are stealing cars to use them for other criminal activity, either to use drugs in the car and live out of the car, or to go on and commit other criminal offenses that can't be traced back to them. So cars are being recovered, but often in incredibly damaged shape. So what is driving these increases in crime? A number of things that we look at. And Colorado has experienced significant increases in what are called historical drivers of crime. So poverty, joblessness, substance abuse, mental health issues, gun sales, unemployment, joblessness. Fewer kids going to school is actually a historical driver. And during the pandemic, we certainly saw a lot fewer kids going to school. So these are the drivers that we look at. And COVID-19 also created impacts on the justice system. So we've had a backlog of cases because the chief judge during the pandemic decided, and I completely agree with her, that it wasn't safe to bring community members into the courthouse as jurors or witnesses. So the DA's office was still open, the courthouse was open, we were at work every day. But jury trials were not being conducted. So that created a backlog of cases. Also, a lot of individuals were appearing for court virtually, which has a different impact on the case population. Sheriff Pelley also had to limit the jail population, as did many sheriffs throughout the metro area, to limit how many people were getting sick at the jail. Incarcerated individuals, medical staff, jail staff, their families when they go home, and so on. And then last but not least, the judges were doing, I think with best intentions, were issuing more personal recognizance bonds to try to keep the jail population down. But certainly the data has shown that that number went up during the pandemic, and now it's coming back down. So what I would say is, short term, there's a lot we can do to improve public safety. Long term, as a state, we need to address mental health issues, drug addiction, and homelessness. These problems cannot be ignored and allowed to fester. And it's a complex issue. It's not just a district attorney problem or solution. These things require a community response and a state response. But we see these come up in criminal activity so often. You see there's a study that was reported on by the Daily Camera where homeless individuals make up a very small percentage of our population, but we're committing from 2018 through 2019, 10% of all the felony offenses that were coming into the courthouse. The top one was drug possession, which is no longer a felony under Colorado state law. So that's no longer on the board when you look at the top 10. But felony menacing, burglary, and assault were among those top 10 offenses, and that data is available on our website if you want to look at it. The sad part of this too is so often the victims in those cases were also homeless individuals. So we're currently prosecuting murder cases, assault cases, an arson case, where an individual who was struggling with homelessness is the defendant, and the victims were also individuals who were homeless at the time. So we need to do a lot better for the community, but also for all those individuals. Yes, ma'am.
Do we differentiate at all between what I call the legitimate homeless in that community and the vagrants that just come in, they know where to get a shower, they know where to get food, they know where to get food, and they have to go.
So is there some way in the system to differentiate between individuals who are homeless, or, and to paraphrase what you're saying, but correct me if you're wrong, or choosing to come here as vagrants, as you said, because they want to use the resources that we have available? I can tell you there's a group called the High Utilizer Group, made up of different agencies from within the city of Boulder that just started meeting, and they invited our office to participate to identify that and to start targeting more resources at those who really need them. Because high utilizers is the phrase that we use to describe people who are using up hospital resources, law enforcement resources, coming into the court system, having an impact on public safety. And they're a small percentage of people, but having, again, an outsized impact on the public. So what can you do on these things? I would just highlight a couple things. First, when I walk my dog in the morning, we go out early in the morning. Almost every time there's a garage open and there's a bike sitting there. And I feel like the gods are just having fun with the district attorney. I'm like, please close the garage. I'm gonna go close the garage. I can't close the garage. We need to close the garage. We need to lock up at night. We need to lock our car doors. One month had 17 cars broken into that were unlocked, 15 unsecured guns in those cars. So that just makes me apoplectic because of where those guns are going is never a good place. But just Boulder County has grown by 100,000 people in 30 years. And with that population growth, it brought some great changes and wonderful people. But also with any population growth, you also see an increase in crime. So we have to be realistic about the fact that the 1985 Boulder is different than the Boulder of today. And part of that comes from just simply the population growth. So raising safety awareness with your friends and family, engaging local leaders and legislators, and making sure that you're staying connected on different things we're doing around public safety and community safety. Do you have any questions about that at all?
Another
Yes.
thing, I work for KeyBank, and you wouldn't believe how many women leave their pocketbooks or their checkbooks in the car, and they get it stolen all the time.
I think it's important to be careful, and we never blame victims. We're always going to fight for victims. Even if someone leaves their stuff laying out, they're still a victim. But what I want to do is, in our office, I really truly believe that we have a strong response to crime, and that's exactly what we should do. That's what we're there for. What I want to see is reduce the number of crimes being committed. So that's why I talk about these things with you, because we could have a great prosecutor and a great victim advocate, we could have the person go to jail, or be punished appropriately, or get into the diversion program, whatever it is. But I want to limit and reduce the number of cases coming into the courthouse. So that's why we talk about crime prevention. We go out in the community every week talking about crime prevention and how we reduce these crimes of opportunity. Yes?
You're also using catalytic converters. Is that a separate statistic? And are you advocating change around those or something? Is that a big problem?
So catalytic converter theft is a big problem statewide, yes, and Boulder's had an increase in catalytic converters being stolen. So CU Police Department and Boulder Police Department just partnered on an effort to put identification tags on catalytic converters. And I encourage you to look for more information on when those opportunities are offered. It was done for free. Those identification tags allow law enforcement to trace back where these catalytic converters have been stolen from, and also to identify when these crime rings, because usually it's a crime ring, stealing catalytic converters. In other words, it's not the 18-year-old kid who lives on my street who's saying, oh, I'll go steal the Doherty's catalytic converter today. These are people who are operating and doing this for money, and doing it widespread and having a terrible impact, and it's usually a small group of people. So helping law enforcement by getting those identification tags on catalytic converters is important.
Part of the problem with tracking those is that it's easier to track the ones that they steal for resale, but it's my understanding that some of them are stealing them to recover the rare earth metals inside.
Right.
And take them apart, you know, and then throw away what they want.
Yes. So catalytic converters are being used to break down for other metals so people can make a profit. You're absolutely right. There are some reasons for hope, and I am an eternal optimist, but I'm very hopeful and optimistic for the future and excited for the work ahead. I'll highlight with you a couple things that are going to help short term. First, law enforcement is now focusing a lot of energy on repeat offenders and problematic locations to make sure that individuals who are having that kind of impact on the community are being addressed. We fully support and we partner with them on those efforts. The jail has lifted all of the COVID-related restrictions on the population. So they went from having roughly 280 people in the jail during the pandemic at times to 470 as of today. And I think that has an impact on community safety. The courthouse is back up and fully running with trials being tried to full capacity. So our staff is working incredibly hard on the cases that are coming into the DA's office in the courthouse, and also trying the cases and working through the backlog that we've had, and making sure that we, along with law enforcement, judges, and juries, can now make decisions free of the limitations imposed by the pandemic. So there are reasons for hope short term. I think these things are going to have a ripple effect for a while. You will not see me on October 1st with a mission accomplished sign on Pearl Street. It's going to take time for us to get through the impact by the pandemic, but I do think things are, and the data from Boulder PD, for example, shows that things are starting to get better. We're starting to see those crime rates come back down. And part of that is because we're returning to one another as a society. More people being on the street, just by the very nature of it, reduces how many crimes are being committed. Because there are witnesses out there, there are good Samaritans out there, there are people out and about. And we're starting to see the crime rates come back down. We have a data dashboard I just wanted to touch on very quickly. Sorry. Our data dashboard is available on our website. We're one of the 8 offices in Colorado that just launched this dashboard. So you can look at our website for data. There's a lot of different data on our website. We put this slide together to capture a couple things we have. So for example, percentage of cases filed as felonies, felonies being resolved as misdemeanors. This number is really interesting to me because it shows that the time from a case is filed as a felony to a time a case is resolved is 274 days.
Whoa.
I used to simply say it's just too long, but now I can say it's 274. And with that data, go to the judges and the public defenders and say, we have to drive this number down. This is taking far too long for cases to be resolved. For everybody involved, the victim, the community, taxpayer, and the accused. Part of these numbers are skewed by the case backlog from COVID. So for example, if we had a murder committed in 2019, and that case has been pending the entire time because trials were suspended on and off during the pandemic, that's skewing to the high end of the 274. But still, that number is too high. So this data is available on our website. We're a very data-driven office, and then we share all our data out with the community, including our efforts to identify and address racial inequities that exist in the justice system. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. Let's talk about elder abuse for a few minutes. You see here the definition from the U.S. Department of Justice. In Colorado, crimes against older folks in the community are crimes against those 70 years and older. 70 and older is the definition of at-risk or elder abuse. One could argue to me and convince me, or I'm convinced, that people who are 90 are still able to take care of themselves, take care of their business, and they're operating fine. But under the law, it's 70 and above qualifies someone at risk. So if someone were to assault me on Pearl Street, just when I'm walking down the street, it's one level of criminal offense. If I'm 71 and they assault me, it's a higher level of offense because I'm an at-risk adult. So it bumps that person up to a higher sentencing range because of the priority we place on older people in our community, on older people in the state of Colorado. Older people have greater protections under the law, and there's higher sentencing ranges for individuals who commit crimes against older people.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Is that also financial?
Great
Because
question.
people,
So that is financial as well. So theft or fraud against someone who's 70 or above is considered a crime against an at-risk individual as defined under the law, and it carries with it more severe penalties.
Landlord-tenant issues?
So if it's landlord-tenant and it's criminal, yes, that person would still be at risk. So not every landlord-tenant issue, of course, is going to be criminal. I know Liz Parker's here, and she's done a lot of work on landlord-tenant law. And then we have people who are going to be available outside and during the day who can answer some of your questions about landlord-tenants. But for example, if someone has a dispute with their landlord about the heat being turned off, that doesn't necessarily rise to the level of a crime the first time it happens. But it doesn't mean the person's not without protection. So there are some resources available to people in the community who are being victimized by unscrupulous landlords. 2/3 of elder abuse victims are women, Black, Latino, poor, and isolated older adults, and we'll talk about isolation more in a couple minutes, are disproportionately victimized. So what I wanted to share with you, and this is somewhat of a sobering statistic, but in over 75% of elder abuse incidents, the perpetrator is a family member. A family member. That's really hard for me, even though I've seen and worked these cases for so long, that's still hard for me to accept. I imagine it's hard for you to accept. And that's why so many times these crimes go unreported. Because people don't want to get their family member in trouble, or they don't want to believe it's possible that their family member is the one committing the crime.
Or they don't have any other option.
Or they don't have other options. We're going to talk about what resources are available to you in the community when you feel like you don't have any other options. But if someone's taking care of your finances, for example, often it's a family member, and you've given them that authority and responsibility because you trust them, and you maybe don't have other options. But you see here the data around how often the family member is the perpetrator on elder abuse. And on the right-hand side of the screen is the breakdown. 40% are older children, adult children, spouses 15%, grandchildren 9%. So if you have a friend who tells you, my son's been taking care of my finances, but it's weird because I feel like my bank account's going down more than I expected, you should keep this data in mind. It doesn't mean the son automatically is guilty of a crime, but it means we have to see through the myth that if it's a family member, nothing bad can happen, and take action to protect those around us. So elder abuse occurs, it can occur anywhere, of course. One thing I wanted to highlight for you is APS found in 2018-2019 that 71% of the cases occur in the home. So in a private home, either the victim's home or a family member's home. Here in Boulder County, from January 1st of 2021 through September 22nd of 22, we had 101 cases filed where the victim was at risk. We've had 1,174 cases just during that same time period with victims who are 55 or older. So they don't qualify as at risk, but we still look at their age as an important distinction there. And we'll take a closer look at it here with the breakdown by case type. And you see on the left-hand side of the screen there the type of offense. So felony, juvenile, misdemeanor, traffic. Cases with victims 55 and above, those are the number of cases we've had come in during that same period from all of 2021 up until yesterday, 2022.
What a high percentage.
And then look perhaps more importantly, as we talk about elder abuse, that 70 and above distinction I talked about, here's the breakdown. So that same time period, all of 2021 up until yesterday, 2022, victims 70 and over, felonies 181, 9 juveniles 49, misdemeanor 85, traffic cases. Here are some of the local demographics we see. Actually, I have this in another slide. But I don't think I need to spend too much time talking about the impacts of elder abuse. I will say it has a tremendous financial impact on the individual. And you look at the value of loss there nationwide, $2.9 billion dollars due to elder abuse and elder fraud. Victims of elder abuse are 4 times more likely to end up being admitted to a nursing home and 3 times more likely to be admitted to a hospital. And that's tied to the impacts of being a victim. And as a result, they end up in a perhaps more difficult place than they were previously. And obviously, they suffer impacts to their health, physical and mental health. So this slide's entitled, "Why is the problem likely to get worse?" I could entitle it, "Why is the world getting better?" which is that we're having a bigger adult, older population. So we're having more older folks in our community, which is great. Except, as a prosecutor, I also look at crime rates. So when we look at the number of older people in the community going up, we're likely going to see the number of elder abuse cases going up as well. So that's why this session today and the time that they've given us at Senior Law Day is so important so that we can protect ourselves and our loved ones. Locally, the number of individuals 80 and above is expected to grow 244% by 2050. I'm hoping, by the way, to contribute to that number. That's one of my goals. But in all seriousness, the older population is growing quickly in the United States. So with that, we have to make sure we're taking steps to protect them. I've always just personally believed that there's a time in someone's life, there's some age at which you've earned the right to be free from crime. I've just always felt that way. Unfortunately, that's not the reality in which we live. But we've had cases where someone will be victimized, and I'll say to the staff, I'll say, you know what, you lived to 86, you deserve to not have this happen to you. The world owes you more. And some of that is true under the law. We have elder abuse protections, we have the at-risk crimes, we have specialized units that respond to these things, we have Senior Law Day. These crimes still happen. So that's why I want to prevent and reduce them from happening. Yes, ma'am?
Do you have any statistics on the percent of elders being charged with crimes?
So I can get that information for you. The question is, do we have data on number of elders being charged with crimes? And my contact information is in the last slide. And if you want to follow up with me, I can break that down for you.
It seems that if the population is growing, these are people who could be very experienced.
They could be experienced, you're right. I didn't look at our older population the same way, but let's take a look at that data and I'll share it with you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what percentage of the older victims actually filed charges against their relatives on financial fraud?
That's a great question, and it's going to lead us into the next couple slides. What percentage of people are actually reporting these crimes? My time is almost up. So a couple things here, and it'll explain why, to your question, fewer people are reporting than we would like. So often, they're being victimized because they're unfamiliar with technological advances, and that's why the sessions today are so important for you to attend. They're isolated, they're lonely, especially during the pandemic, right? When people had to stay home for their own safety and health. So being aware that these problems exist and looking out for red flags is key. And I'm going to talk in a minute about what red flags to look out for. We're making sure that we all do our very best. Elder abuse happens in every community. So making sure we do our very best to prevent and reduce the number of elder abuse cases that are coming into the office. So let me skip ahead here because I want to get to your question. So here's why they're underreported, to your question, sir. Sometimes individuals who are being victimized are in a state of advanced cognitive decline, and they're unable to identify that they've been victimized or unable to take steps to report it when they are aware. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Also, they don't want to report on family members or loved ones. There was a time, my dad and mom have passed, but there was a time when I would help take care of their finances. And of course, I did it the right way and did the right thing. But I imagine they would have had a difficult time reporting on me if they realized that I was skimming money from their bank account. But they absolutely should if that had happened. We need to make those reports because otherwise it just goes on and on and on. Older adults also express embarrassment or self-blame, right? Because they feel like it's partly their fault. So 63% of older individuals said they did not want police involved. 74% said they did not want prosecutors involved. So they didn't want their family to face the consequences. So knowing the risk factors, and this is going to be my last slide here, but knowing the risk factors goes a long way to being able to turn to others for help. So when you talk to your friends and family, keep these risk factors in mind. They're particularly important. So remembering that people who are struggling, right, who are starting to go through advanced cognitive decline, who are older, who are isolated, all these factors, which were exacerbated by COVID, are things that people take advantage of. And we have to do our very best to not only prevent these things from happening, but also to report them when they do. One of the things that reporting allows, either to Adult Protective Services, which is an option, or to the police, or to the district attorney's office, is it allows us to follow up and see, was a crime committed? It doesn't necessarily mean the person's going to jail. It allows us, though, to make sure that your safety is being preserved. And allowing us to investigate and make sure we support you every step of the way is key. So looking out for any unexplained injuries, looking out for money being missing, looking out for strange behaviors, people being intentionally isolated by another person in their life. So someone gets a new caregiver and the caregiver suddenly says they're unavailable to see you ever. And they don't get together with you for lunch or coffee like they used to. Isolation, making sure you make a report so that we can act on it, because older people in our community are indeed our greatest generation. So make sure we're doing everything we can to protect them. I'm honored to be your district attorney. I'm available for anything you need and to have additional conversations about this, so feel free to reach out, and we'll come to other community groups if you need us to be there. I'm so excited to be with you today. I really appreciate you taking the time to come to Senior Law Day and for our office to be a part of it. So thank you so much and have a great day.